Hello everyone, всем привет! It's Babs from Speak Like Russian, and today it's all about cursive. In the previous video I referred to a few examples of how letters look like in cursive, for example S looking like a snake, and H looking like a slanted H, and how most English speakers find it weird how our T can look like an English M. Today we will talk about Russian alphabet again, but this time it's all about cursive, which is a handwritten style, which most people find difficult to understand. And the best way to do it is to jump straight into the sentence which contains every letter of the Russian alphabet. So get your pen and paper ready and let's do it together! And this is the sentence which contains every letter of the Russian alphabet. So in English it's eat these soft French buns with jam and drink some tea. Wow, what a tongue twister! And in Russian, съешьте эти мягкие французские булочки с джемом и выпейте чаю. I know this might look completely advanced, but don't worry about the translation or pronunciation. Now I just want to put your attention how different the typed version on the left looks to the handwritten version on the right. As you can see, our T looks like an English M, and our E, when typed, looks like a backwards English N, and when handwritten, it looks like an English U. And letter D in the word German looks like an English G in the handwritten version. As you can see, almost all the letters are connected together, and I think it looks very nice. Obviously, not everyone writes like this, but at school we are all taught to write this way. Here is me writing out the letters really fast, but don't worry, now we'll go through each letter one by one. A. Pay attention to the fact how uppercase A looks different to the lowercase a. A word beginning with A is автобус, which means a bus in English. B. A word beginning with B is бабушка. And pay attention how I stress it, not бабушка, бабушка, which means grandmother in Russian. V. A word beginning with V is вилка, which is fork in English. G. And also it's very different, the uppercase and the lowercase, and the word for G is город, which is city in English. The lowercase looks like an English G, and the word beginning with D is dom. Dom means a home or a house. We don't really have a difference between these words. Yeah, which looks like an English E, and the word for yeah is еда, which means food in Russian. Yo. A word for yo is ёлка, which in Russian means a Christmas tree. Ж. A word for Ж is жизнь, which means life. Z, which is similar to English Z. And a word beginning with Z is zebra, which is a conjugate of the English zebra. E. A word beginning with E is игра, which means game in English. Y. A word beginning with Y is yogurt, which is a conjugate of the English word yogurt. K, which is similar to the English K, and the word beginning with K is космонавт, which in English means astronaut. L. A word beginning with L is любовь, which means love in English. M. A word beginning with M is mama, which is similar to a baby saying mama in English. N. And the word beginning with N is a very common word. It's нет, which means no in English. O. And the word beginning with O is another conjugate. It's отель, which means a hotel in English. P. A word beginning with P is papa, which means dad in English. R. a word beginning with r is radio, which is another conjugate that means radio in English. S, a word beginning with s is sad, and this one is not a conjugate because it has nothing to do with being sad. Sad means garden in English. T, I know it looks like an M, but it's a T, and the word beginning with T is тарелка. Тарелка means plate in English. U, a word beginning with U is университет, which means university in English. F, a word beginning with F is fitness, which in English obviously means fitness. H, a word beginning with H is холод, which means cold in English. Ц, a word beginning with Ц is цветы, which means flowers in English. Ч, a word beginning with Ч is человек, which means a person in English. Ш, a word beginning with Ш is шапка, which means a hat in English. Щ, a word beginning with Sh is щенок, which means a puppy in English. Hard sign. Actually, no word starts with the hard sign, but for example, объем. Объем means volume in English, and without a hard sign, it would have sounded different. E. We don't actually have any words that start with E, but don't worry about it now. We don't actually have this sound in English, but we'll cover this in future lessons. Soft sign. No words actually start with this, but we use it for example in the word семья, which means family in English. A word beginning with is Eskimo, which is a conjugate of the English word Eskimo. U, a word beginning with U is юбка, which means skirt in English. Я, a word beginning with я is яблоко, which means an apple in English. And the T fox. As you can see, it's really not that difficult to write like Russian, but to improve it, it's really important to practice regularly. You can start by tracing the letters and then move on to writing them on your own. Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French buns with jam and drink some tea" until you're sick of buns and tea. Who knows, you could be the next Dostoevsky. So grab your pen, your paper, and get writing. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for watching. If you found it useful, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. In the next video, we will cover some basic Russian greetings, and we really hope to see you there. Пока-пока, bye-bye! You can start by tracing the letters. And it's really... And the T fox. As you can see, it's not... T fox and... What am I saying? And... Write out the phrase... Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French buns." Soft French buns? Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French... These. Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French dots." Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French buns with jam and drink some tea" until you're sick of jam, until you're sick of buns and tea. Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French buns with jam and tea." Oh, нет. Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French buns and with..." Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French buns with jam and tea." God damn it! Write out the phrase "Eat these soft French buns with jam and drink some tea" until you're sick of buns and what? And tea. Almost. Oh, yes. So grab your pen.